Every morning, I take 2 plates down from the cabinet. I don't think about it. My hand just reaches. And then I stand there for a second, holding both of them, and I remember, and I put one back. But not always right away. Sometimes I leave the second plate on the counter for a little while, like I'm not ready yet. Like putting it back means admitting something I still don't fully know how to admit. My name is Eleanor Marsh. I'm 73 years old, and I live alone in the same house I've lived in for 41 years. The kitchen smells like it always did. The floor still creaks in the same spot by the refrigerator. The curtains are the ones we picked out together at a little shop in Vermont the summer our youngest went off to college. Blue and white. They're faded now. I should replace them. I won't, though. I'm not recording this because I have something important to say. I want to be clear about that. I'm not a wise woman with lessons to hand out. I'm just someone who has been alive long enough to see things very clearly now that I couldn't see before. And I've been sitting in this kitchen a lot lately, in the quiet, and I thought maybe if I said some of it out loud, it would feel less like it was pressing on my chest. My doctor says my heart is tired, not broken, just tired. She uses careful language, doctors do, but I've been around long enough to know what tired hearts mean, so I'm saying things while I can still say them. His name was Robert Marsh. We called him Bob, although he hated that. He'd give you this look, just a look, not a word, and you'd feel appropriately corrected. I called him Bob anyway sometimes, just to get the look. I miss the look. We were married for 46 years. 46 years is a long time, and people say that like it's an achievement, and I suppose it is. But what nobody tells you is that inside those 46 years, there are 1,000 smaller things, 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays, 1,000 dinners. 1,000 times someone got up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water and didn't try to be quiet enough and woke the other one up. Robert could never be quiet enough. He'd fill a glass of water at 2 in the morning like he was trying to wake the neighbors. Cupboard door, faucet, ice, even in the dark, even when he knew I was a light sleeper. I used to lie there in bed, eyes open, jaw tight. I used to think every single night with this man. I would give anything, to hear that cupboard door one more time. We weren't dramatic couple. I want you to understand that. We didn't have grand gestures. Robert never wrote me poetry or surprised me with trips to Paris. He wasn't that kind of man. He was the kind of man who noticed when you were running low on coffee and bought more without being asked, who shoveled the driveway before you woke up, who sat with you in the hospital waiting room for 3 hours without saying a word, not because he didn't care, but because he understood that sometimes there's nothing to say, and presence is its own language. I didn't always appreciate that language. I wanted words sometimes. I'm a words person. I'd want him to say something, to name what we were feeling, to meet me there in the feeling, and he'd just sit, and I'd feel alone even though he was right next to me. I spent a lot of years feeling alone in rooms where Robert was right next to me. I understand now that I was never alone, not once. Our daughter, Claire, came to visit last month. She lives in Portland now, has for years. She walked in and she looked at the table, really looked at it, and she said, "Mom, why do you still do that?" She meant the 2 placemats, the 2 sets of silverware, the habit. I didn't have a good answer for her. I said something like, "Old habits," and she nodded and let it go because she's kind and she didn't want to push. But that night after she went to bed, I sat at the table alone and I thought about why. And I think it's this. Setting the table for two was something I did every day for 41 years in this house. It was so small that I never once thought of it as love. It was just the table. It was just dinner. It was just the thing you do. But now that there's only one of us and I still reach for the second plate, now I understand that all those years of second plates were the love. Not the trips we took, not the anniversaries, not the conversations where we finally said the hard things. Those mattered too, but the table, set for two every evening for 41 years, that was me saying without ever saying it, you belong here. There is a place for you here. I expect you to come home. I think about the years we moved through without paying attention, the years when the kids were young and we were so tired, both of us, that we'd sit down to dinner and barely speak, not because anything was wrong, just because we were running on empty and the kids needed so much and there was always something else to do after dinner and we just sit there, eating, existing in the same space. And I think, we should talk more, we should connect more, and then someone would spill something or need help with homework, and we'd be up again, moving again, and the thought would dissolve. Those quiet dinners embarrassed me sometimes. I'd read articles, this was before the internet, in magazines, about couples who kept the romance alive, who had regular date nights, who looked at each other across candlelit tables, and I'd feel like we were failing at something, like our ordinary silence meant we were losing each other. What I didn't know then is that ordinary silence is something, that two people who can sit together without performing, without filling every space with noise, who can just be in a room together, that's not emptiness. That's a kind of intimacy that takes years to build. I built it, and I didn't know I was building it. There was a night our children were maybe 10 and 13, and Robert and I had a fight, a real one, the kind where things get said that you can't quite unsay. I don't even remember exactly what it was about. Money, maybe, or the way he'd handled something with Claire's school. The specifics have faded, the way the specifics always do. But I remember going to bed angry. I remember lying on my side of the bed, facing the wall, and thinking very clearly, I don't know if I like this man. Not that I didn't love him, love wasn't the question, but like, whether I actually enjoyed who he was, whether I'd choose him again knowing what I knew, that felt uncertain that night. He fell asleep before I did. He always fell asleep first, another thing that used to drive me mad. And I lay there listening to him breathe, and I was still angry, but underneath the anger something else was happening, something quieter. I was noticing the familiar sound of him, the particular rhythm of it, the way the mattress held the weight of him beside me. I didn't forgive him that night. We didn't talk it through until a few days later, clumsily like we always did. But something settled in me in that dark room, some recognition I didn't have words for. I think what I recognized was, this is my life. This man breathing beside me in the dark is my life. And I didn't know whether to be grateful or frightened by that. I know now. It was always, always the thing to be grateful for. He got sick in 2019, quietly, the way things go wrong, a diagnosis in October, and then things moved fast, the way they do once something is named, and I became very busy, very suddenly, being useful, calling doctors, reading research I only half understood, managing medications, managing everyone's feelings about what was happening. I was competent. I have always been competent in a crisis. It's something I was proud of. But in being so competent, I didn't always stop. I didn't always put down the clipboard, metaphorically speaking, and just sit with him, just be his wife and not his coordinator. He never complained about it. He wasn't a complainer. But there was an afternoon near the end when I walked into the living room to update him on something, some logistical thing I'd been handling, and he looked at me with this expression, not frustrated, not sad exactly, just quiet, and he said, "Ellie, come sit with me." That was it. Come sit with me. And I sat down next to him on the couch, and I didn't say anything, and neither did he, and we watched the light change in the room for about an hour, and it was, I don't have a bigger word for this, it was enough. It was so much more than enough. I wish I had done that more, put down the lists, come sit. I understand now that he was asking for me, not for my help. He had always been asking for